We are moving along quite happily in Chapter 3 of Brotherhood of Darkness, and this is video number 3. The group came to be known as Milner's Kindergarten, and eventually became the outer circle of his secret society. In 1909, the kindergarten returned to England and organized the first roundtable group. Subsequently, roundtable groups were formed in other nations to pursue world government. Professor Quigley tells us the roundtable groups were semi-secret discussion and lobbying groups organized on behalf of Lord Milner, the dominant trustee of the Rhodes Trust. The original purpose of these groups was to seek to federate the English-speaking world along lines laid down by Cecil Rhodes and William T. Stead. And the money for the organizational work came originally from the Rhodes Trust. By 1915, roundtable groups existed in 7 countries, including England and the United States. Since 1925, there have been substantial contributions from wealthy individuals and from foundations and firms associated with the international banking fraternity, especially organizations associated with J.P. Morgan, the Rockefeller and Whitney families, and the associates of Lazar Brothers and of Morgan, Grenfell and Company. Thus we see the close relationship that developed between the roundtable groups and the international banking fraternity. Lord Milner, members of his roundtable groups, and several of Professor Ruskin's other disciples gained control of the English government, fomented World War I, and forced Great Britain into that war. Why? To create the League of Nations and a world government. When the war ended, England was bankrupt. Lord Milner's men met with Colonel House and his followers at the Paris Peace Conference and asked them to take over leadership of their movement. The Americans agreed. As a result of the meetings that followed, Royal Institutes of International Affairs were established in several of the Commonwealth nations, and the Council on Foreign Relations was created in the United States. Professor Quigley tells us that Lionel Curtis, a member of Milner's kindergarten, was assigned the task of creating the new organizations. At the end of the War of 1914, it became clear that the organization of this system had to be greatly extended. The task was entrusted to Lionel Curtis, who established in England and each dominion a front organization to the existing local roundtable group. This front organization, called the Royal Institute of International Affairs, had its nucleus in each area, the existing submerged roundtable group. In New York, it was known as the Council on Foreign Relations and was a front for J.P. Morgan and Company in association with the very small American Roundtable Group. In fact, the original plans for the Royal Institute of International Affairs and the Council on Foreign Relations were drawn up at Paris. Just a little aside here, you can find the website for Royal Institute of International Affairs, and it goes by Chatham House, so you can look that up. On page 866 of his book, Professor Quigley revealed what lies ahead and the fraudulent nature of our political process. It is increasingly clear that in the 20th century the expert will replace the industrial tycoon in control of the economic system, even as he will replace the democratic voter in control of the political system. Hopefully the elements of choice and freedom may survive for the ordinary individual, and that he may be free to make a choice between 2 opposing political groups, even if these groups have little policy choice within the parameters of policy established by the experts. And he may have the choice to switch his economic support from one large unit to another. But in general, his freedom and choice will be controlled within very narrow alternatives by the fact that he will be numbered from birth and followed as a number through his educational training, his required military or other public service, his tax contributions, his health and medical requirements, and his final retirement and death benefits. Then he explained how our electoral process really works. The chief problem of American political life for a long time has been how to make the two congressional parties more national and international. The argument that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one perhaps of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. Have you ever wondered why we don't try to win the wars we send our men to fight? Professor Quigley explained the new agenda. The rather naive American idea that war aims involve the destruction of the enemy's regime and the imposition on the defeated people of a democratic system with a prosperous economy will undoubtedly be replaced by the idea that the enemy regime must be maintained, perhaps in a modified form, so that we have some government with whom we can negotiate in order to obtain our more limited aims. Most people believe that Hitler took over the Rhineland, Austria, and the Sudetenland because of Prime Minister Chamberlain's policy of appeasement. But that wasn't the case. Professor Quigley tells us that the Round Table Group supported Adolf Hitler and encouraged him to take Austria and the Sudetenland. It is impossible to understand the events that led up to World War II unless you know about Cecil Rhodes' secret society and realize that it dominated the British government during that era. One of Professor Quigley's most shocking revelations was the fact that the American Communist Party was partly financed by J.P. Morgan and Company. The chief evidence, however, can be found in the files of the HUAC, House Un-American Activities Committee, which showed Tom Lamont, a senior partner in J.P. Morgan and Company, and that was written by the editor, his wife Flora, and his son Corliss as sponsors and financial angels to almost a score of extreme left organizations, including the Communist Party itself. And I will stop that right there. This was video number 3 of chapter 3, and we are in Brotherhood of Darkness. And see you in video number 4. Stay with us. This book really doesn't have many more videos to go. I hope you're enjoying this and finding this somewhat enlightening, if somewhat discouraging for those of you who are hearing this information for the very first time.